Every year, on a Thursday in June, the greatest race in the world begins. Not the most technologically advanced. Not the most watched. Not the most profitable. The greatest. 24 hours around a circuit that runs partly on public roads through the French countryside. A race that destroys cars and occasionally breaks hearts. A race that has produced more legendary moments than any other event in motorsport history. This is Le Mans. The Circuit de la Sarthe is not a purpose-built racing facility. The Hunaudiers Straight, the longest straight in top-level motorsport, is part of the road between Le Mans and Tours that ordinary French drivers use every day. The barriers go up for race week. Then they come down again. The circuit is 13.6 kilometers long. In 24 hours, the leading cars complete over 350 laps. They travel over 5,000 kilometers. At night, at over 200 miles per hour, in traffic, in rain, in fog. There is nothing else like it. Le Mans began in 1923 as a test of reliability. The early races were about survival, which manufacturer could build a car robust enough to run for 24 hours without failing. Bugatti, Bentley, and Alfa Romeo dominated the early years. Winning at Le Mans meant your cars were built well enough to last. The green Bentleys of the late 1920s defined that era. The Bentley boys, wealthy amateur drivers who threw money and enthusiasm at the problem, won 4 consecutive races between 1927 and 1930. Their cars were enormous and fast, and they drove them with a commitment that professional racing drivers of later generations would recognize immediately. Through the 1950s, Le Mans became the proving ground for the world's finest sports cars. Ferrari arrived. Jaguar arrived. Mercedes-Benz arrived with the revolutionary 300 SLR, a car so advanced that the company withdrew from all motorsport after the tragedy of 1955, when a crash in front of the pit straight sent debris into the crowd and killed over 80 people. The 1955 Le Mans disaster was the darkest moment in motorsport history. It changed safety standards globally, ended Mercedes-Benz's racing program for a generation, and forced the sport to reckon with what it was asking of its spectators. But Le Mans continued. And through the 1960s, it became the stage for the greatest rivalry in motorsport. Ferrari versus Ford. Ferrari's dominance. Ford's humiliation in the boardroom. The development of the GT40. The 1966 race where Ford sent a fleet of cars and swept the podium, 3 GT40s crossing the line together in a formation that has become one of the most iconic images in motorsport photography. In the 1970s, Porsche arrived and began building a dynasty. The 917 of 1970, driven by Steve McQueen in the film that bears the race's name, was a machine of such terrifying speed that drivers spoke about it with a mixture of reverence and fear. Joe Siffert, Pedro Rodriguez, Jackie Oliver. The men who drove the 917 were among the most courageous racing drivers who ever lived. Porsche won Le Mans with the 917 in 1970 and in 1971. Then with the 936 in the late 1970s. Then with the 956 and 962 through the 1980s in a period of dominance so complete that manufacturers from around the world restructured their programs specifically around beating the Stuttgart cars. Most of them couldn't. The Porsche 956 and 962 won Le Mans 7 times in a row between 1982 and 1987. 7 consecutive years. In a race where finishing is an achievement and winning is a miracle, doing it 7 times straight is almost incomprehensible. The 1990s brought new manufacturers, new technologies, new threats to Porsche's position. Mazda won in 1991 with a rotary engine, the only time a Japanese manufacturer has taken overall victory. McLaren won in 1995 with the F1 GTR, a road car that had no business competing with purpose-built racing machines and beat them anyway. Audi arrived in 1999 and began their own era of dominance. The R8, the R10 diesel, the R18, Audi won Le Mans 13 times in a 15-year period. They did it with diesel power, hybrid power, and a level of engineering precision that redefined what was possible. Porsche returned in 2015 to challenge them, and the battle between the two Volkswagen Group manufacturers produced some of the most extraordinary racing Le Mans had seen in decades. Toyota had been trying to win Le Mans for years when, in 2018, they finally did. The victory came with a story that was almost too dramatic for fiction, the team that had lost the race on the final lap in 2016, when a mechanical failure denied them certain victory, returning 2 years later to take what had felt inevitable. Le Mans produces stories like that regularly. Stories of victory snatched in the final hours. Of cars repaired in the dark by teams working with flashlights and determination. Of drivers who push through exhaustion and rain and mechanical uncertainty to deliver results that should not have been possible. It is the oldest major motorsport event still running in its original format. It has survived wars, tragedies, financial crises, and the constant evolution of automotive technology. And every June, when the barriers go up on the road between Le Mans and Tours, it begins again. 24 hours. Lap after lap. Through the night. There is nothing else like it. Subscribe for the full story behind every legend. New video every week, no filler, just the cars that actually mattered. Thank you for watching.